This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Are you looking for your next case? Pluto TV has all your favorite crime dramas streaming for free, which means suspicion is free, with countless cases to crack. Watch CSI, Criminal Minds, NCIS, Blue Bloods, Tracker, FBI, and SWAT, all for free from all your favorite devices. Feel the free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/Spotify. Greenlight.com/Spotify.
This podcast contains adult themes and language, and some of the things that we discuss may be disturbing to some listeners. In this podcast, we discuss sexual assault, torture, race, and murder. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care of yourself.
Geraldine Parrish. Let's get into her early life.
Okay.
So Sister Geraldine was a child at one point, and she was born. She was born on May 2nd in 1936. Her maiden name is Brown, and she was born into poverty in Robertsonville, North Carolina, to Zeno and Thelma Brown. The couple had 12 children, so she was born in the Jim Crow South in the 30s.
Yeah.
Robertsonville was incorporated in 1872. And it is a town located in North Carolina's Inner Banks region. The population was 1,269 at the 2020 census and is about 60% Black.
So it's a pretty small town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Living in a small town.
In her youth, Geraldine attended a Catholic church. Later on, she developed an interest in hoodoo, which we'll get into a little bit later. In 1951, when Geraldine was just 15, she married Elmo Rogers, 20, of Robersonville. It's been reported that they had 2 children, but we could find no information about them, so I don't know if they actually exist or if she abandoned them. We don't know.
Interesting. Sometime in the late 1950s, Geraldine headed north with her second husband, James Perkins. She settled in New Jersey, where she lived for 12 years. There she married for the 3rd time to a Spencer Manning. Then in October of 1974, when she was 38, she married somebody else named Troy Lee Parrish, who was 29, and they separated in 1977. So now let's get into the timeline. Take us there, Beth.
Throughout her life, Parrish had to deal with a lot of death. Many of Geraldine's siblings and other family members died of unnatural causes. Her brother, Zeno Jr., was poisoned in a bar in Pennsylvania. Her brother, Lewis, was fatally shot in the Bronx. Another brother, Dennis, was shot dead in Baltimore.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Her sister, Dolly Mae, was killed by her common-law husband. Afterwards, Dolly Mae's daughter, Geraldine, came to live with her aunt, Geraldine. Oh, so she was named after her aunt.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yep.
But when little Geraldine was 11 years old, she died while huffing paint while she was visiting her grandmother, Thelma.
While we don't know for sure what the toll of all these deaths were on Parrish's psyche, she did appear to cling to religion. She became a storefront preacher, but also a practitioner of hoodoo.
This kind of reminds me of a lot of dudes who go to jail, right?
Yeah,
and
find
are in the
religion.
joint for a long time, find religion.
Yeah.
And so after something really traumatic or hard, it makes sense to turn to something spiritual, something that makes you feel like it, to help it make sense, right?
Yeah.
All of this, that is a lot of
for
deaths in the
comfort.
family.
Yeah.
Yes, comfort, exactly. West Africa was once known as the Slave Coast because it was the center of the transatlantic slave trade for centuries. Enslaved Africans brought their religion with them too, to all the plantations in Brazil, Haiti, Cuba, and in Louisiana.
Vodun, or voodoo, as it is known to the rest of the world, is an ancient religion practiced by some 30 million people in the West African nations of Benin, Togo, and Ghana. Hoodoo, on the other hand, is not a religion, but a set of spiritual practices, traditions, and beliefs that were created by enslaved Africans in the southern United States from various traditional African spiritualities, Christianity, and elements of indigenous botanical knowledge.
Now, hoodoo is practiced by individuals, sometimes called root doctors or root healers, who claim to have magical powers. Hoodoo practitioners generally are themselves Catholics who believe in both Catholic saints and African gods.
The practitioner will use such things as roots, herbs, crystals, animal parts, and sometimes body fluids belonging to the person for whom the session is being conducted. A practitioner will call upon the saints or others to help guide the use of the roots and other talismans used in the ceremony.
I love the idea of ritual and ceremony, and I myself, I charge my crystals on the windowsill. I burn sage a lot, and I don't know, it just makes me feel better. And so, again, a lot of this turning to religions that I think are uncommon or practices that are uncommon, they make people feel good. And most of the time, they're not hurting anybody.
No, they're not hurting anybody. Yeah.
Exactly. So Parrish would charge people for solving their problems through hoodoo. While living in New Jersey, she began driving fancy cars and had plenty of cash when she came back home to visit family. She was always able to attract men and married a total of 8 times. My hero! She grew rich and flaunted her wealth. Wow.
She was married 8 times, but not divorced. Although, she didn't always get divorced. Yeah. Just little details. Yeah.
TaxAct knows small business owners can sometimes use a little help with their taxes. That's why TaxAct has Expert Assist, a team of live tax experts ready to answer any questions you may have. Think of them as your own personal sidekick. Not like one of those funny talking animal sidekicks, more like the super smart nerding out on tax code and business casual attire sidekick, but just as helpful and lovable. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
Support comes from ServiceNow. We're for people doing the creative work they actually want to do. That's why this ad was written and read by a real person and not AI. You know what people don't want to do? Boring, busy work. Now with AI agents built into the ServiceNow platform, you can automate millions of repetitive tasks in every corner of your business, IT, HR, and more, so your people can focus on the work that they want to do. That's putting AI agents to work for people. It's your turn. Visit servicenow.com.
Geraldine Parrish's family was afraid of her because of her practice of hoodoo. They believed that she could make men bend to her will. But this power wasn't obvious to the people outside of her family circle. To everyone else, she appeared normal, just a semi-literate lay preacher.
Around 1984, Parrish moved to Baltimore, Maryland. She preached at a storefront church called Ship of Zion. Now the joy of my world is in Zion. Thanks, Miss Lauren. So this Ship of Zion was founded by Reverend Carrie Harrington. A storefront church is a church that is located in a building that was previously used for commercial purposes, such as a store or a strip mall. As was the church's custom on the days that she preached there, she kept what was in the collection plates.
Parrish encouraged her parishioners to take out insurance policies. She herself began taking out insurance policies on relatives and acquaintances, with her as the beneficiary.
Oh.
Most of them were double indemnity policies, meaning that they would pay double if the death was from unnatural causes.
Whoa.
According to Maryland law, any person could take out an insurance policy on their life for the benefit of anyone else. She sometimes allowed the insurance policies to mature for years.
You can't do that anymore, I don't think.
I don't know, but at the time that was the law.
Wow. So at some point, Parrish became acquainted with 20-year-old Edwin Bernardo Gordon. It's been reported that her 18-year-old niece, Renee Burns, who had become enthralled with her Aunt Gerald, introduced Parrish to him. In any case, Gordon soon became her triggerman, and he reportedly would do anything for her.
So she bent him to her will.
Right. But I mean, she also had a lot of money. I don't think
Oh, yeah.
he was under a spell.
No,
But
but people believed that she was able to do that.
And I can't tell you how many times when I was a kid, there was a lot of voodoo in media. Kids, people taking dolls and sticking them with needles and like somebody else writhing in pain. I can't tell you how many times I wish I had a voodoo doll for all the people that had done me wrong. And it was just always a fantasy of mine. Like, golly, if I just knew some voodoo.
If I only had a voodoo doll,
my problems would be solved.
In 1985, Parrish paid Edwin Gordon to kill 46-year-old Frank Ross, her sister Hilda's husband, and the father of her 2 children. Frank was sick, and Parrish had convinced him to take out life insurance, with her as the beneficiary. On November 12, 1985, Frank was found dead behind a gas station where he worked. He'd been shot in the head, and Parrish collected at least $5,000.
Wow. Her next victim was 48-year-old Albert Robinson from New Jersey. Parrish knew him from her preaching time in New Jersey, and she had taken life insurance out on him. Parrish, her niece Renee, and an acquaintance of Renee's named Lionel Robinson drove out to Plainfield, New Jersey.
They met up with Albert and plied him with alcohol, which was his weakness. Hours later, they shot him and left him for dead near Mays Landing, New Jersey. But he survived. However, he'd been so drunk he didn't remember what had happened to him.
Oh, no!
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That was a wild night, he said as he woke up.
How did I get this hole in my abdomen? A few months later, on October 6th, 1986, they tried the same trick. This time, after the trio got Albert drunk, they took him to Baltimore, where he was shot dead and left on the B&O train tracks near Clifton Park.
In 1986, Parrish and her mother, Thelma Brown, bought a house on Kennedy Avenue in East Baltimore. In February of 1987, Parrish married again, this time to Curtis Bell, 32. Her age was listed on the marriage certificate as 38. She was actually 50 years old.
Wow.
And that marriage didn't last too long. Curtis ended up in prison on a gun charge.
Dang. You know, the age, that's a big
age difference. Yeah.
Age difference. 38 to 50 is, it just seems like who would buy that if she was actually 50? But, you know, this is in the 80s. It was the 80s. You couldn't like Google anything or like look anybody up, right? So in my mind, it would have been really easy to like carry out alive for a long time. If nobody's like looking too hard.
If nobody's questioning you. Yeah.
I'm 25. So there. On September 23rd, 1987, Parrish married John Davis, a retired man in his 70s. He collected Social Security and pension checks, which Parrish would take, giving him only $25 a month. I'm sorry, baby. The check was short this month. Don't be mad. I'm Geraldine. I'm Sister Geraldine. Do we have any first-time visitors? Open Bibles to Psalms. I don't know. My Geraldine bit needs some work.
So Parrish had a boarder named Helen Wright. She was 65, and she lived in a room at the back of the house. On February 1st, 1987, Helen was shot in the head while walking home. Doctors were able to save her life, removing the bullet lodged behind her right eye.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she took out a life insurance policy on basically somebody who was Airbnb-ing with her?
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Wow. Just over a month later, Parrish sent Helen out to pick up some Chinese food. While Helen was walking back to the house, she was shot in the back of the head, this time fatally. Police assumed it was a robbery attempt gone wrong.
The fact that it was the second attempt on her life was written off as a coincidence due to inner-city violence. And Parrish collected at least $10,000 in insurance money, and she continued to collect on Helen's Social Security benefits.
Wow. I mean, when you said mastermind, did you use the word evil in front of that earlier? Because that's
I didn't, but yeah, it's appropriate.
Yeah, thank you. On September 19th, 1987, Parrish's 27-year-old niece, Dolly Brown. Every time I see Dolly, I want to say Parton, but it's Dolly Brown and her 37-year-old boyfriend, Ronald Mickner, were at Ronald's home sitting at the kitchen table when they were ambushed by gunmen. Ronald died of a gunshot wound to the head.
Dolly was shot 4 times in the head, but was still alive and was rushed to the hospital. Ultimately, she survived.
Wow.
Police believed that the attack was drug-related and Ronald had been the intended victim.
Wow. So basically, any excuse to not investigate these crimes,
Right.
it's inner city violence, it's drugs, we're done.
Yeah.
Is what law enforcement did. But it is interesting that this woman has a lot of people around her getting shot and dying.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yeah. Several months later, Parrish married again, this time to Reverend Rayfield Gilliard, a 79-year-old Baptist minister. Rayfield's wife of 43 years had died, and he was lonely and probably vulnerable. On January 18th, 1988, he married Rosalind W. Brown, 49. Rosalind was actually Parrish. She had a name change too? Fake names?
Fake names, yep.
My God, Scammy McScammerson. Oh, wow.
15 days after the marriage, Rayfield died. The official cause of death was cardiovascular disease, but the Reverend Alfonso Thompson, who had married the couple, said Mr. Gilliard did not have heart trouble as far as he knew. He said Rayfield became sick after eating something. Rayfield's estate was left to his new wife. It wasn't huge, but she did get his house, some cash, and his Social Security benefits.
Ooh, which she gets to keep unless she marries again. Wow.
Well, she just, probably would just use a
Don't tell
different
me,
name.
but look, they think her name is Rosalind. So
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
On March 6th of 1988, Dolly went to visit her grandmother. Afterwards, as she was waiting for a cab, she was jumped from behind by an attacker who slit her throat. She was again rushed to the hospital, and she again survived. That's too many attempts on your life.
Yeah,
Poor Dolly.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't even believe it.
Sometime afterward, Dolly went to the police and told them that her uncle had demanded $5,000 to keep her from being killed by a contract killer. Police didn't really take her seriously. She abused heroin and didn't have any money or known enemies. They thought that her uncle was just trying to capitalize on her fears because she'd been attacked twice.
Wow. Another write-off.
Yeah.
Another writing off of somebody who was victimized.
Yeah.
And part of me wonders if her race didn't play
for
a
sure.
part. Her race and her engagement in illicit substances
absolutely
contributed to her being ignored.
Yep.
But they did wire her up and have her meet with her uncle. The uncle was caught on tape demanding the money. He was arrested and the case was closed. But 2 months later, on May 19th, she was shot again. No!
This time, she was walking with her Aunt Geraldine, or Aunt Gerald, is what they called her, when Parrish asked her to sit on some steps to a house, telling her she'd be right back.
Oh, no.
Seconds later, a man ran up to her and shot her 3 times in the head again.
Stop.
And miraculously, she again survived.
Oh, my God. Wow.
I don't know what kind of gun they were using, but it had to have been like real, I don't know.
Teeny tiny, something
small caliber.
Yeah. Store.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking, look, Parrish is putting a lot of effort into this voodoo, and she needs to take notes and see what Dolly is doing. What sort of anointing,
what kind of magic is Dolly using? Yeah.
What God does she pray to? Can I meet him? So Dolly didn't mention to police about the extortion attempt by her uncle, and nothing was done to investigate aside from an initial 24-hour report. Geraldine Parrish was the beneficiary on an insurance policy against Dolly Brown, worth more than $10,000.
Parrish's last husband was Milton E. Baines Jr. He was also her nephew.
Okay.
He was 39. She was 52.
Wait. They're related by blood?
Yeah.
Nephew and auntie?
Yep.
Okay. Questioning. Lots of questions.
Woo. At the time of their marriage, Milton said that he felt like the luckiest man in the world.
Oh.
Later, he believed that she hired a root woman to cast a spell over him. He said black magic convinced him to marry his aunt while living in the same house with another husband.
Black magic did that. Now, are we
Yes.
referring to the black magic that is brown in color, comes in glass bottles, and you can get it at a liquor store? I don't know. I'm just wondering.
Could have been a factor.
Black-
I don't know.
Black magic, I believe, is a brown liquor, and it'll do stuff to you. So maybe it was that. Milton came to Baltimore from Richmond, Virginia in December of 1987 after losing his job and falling out with his common-law wife. He eventually moved in with his Aunt Gerald. John Davis, 75, was living in the basement of the home at the time. Milton thought he was just a boarder, but if you recall, Parrish had married John in September of 1987.
Yeah, that's the one that she was taking his benefits and giving him $25 a month.
Right.
Right.
This is a scam. I'm surprised it's
This is
gone off this long.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but this is unsustainable. Like, this is so brazen and outlandish. Like, it almost reminds me of that orange guy who's got those 91 indictments across the country.
Eventually, it'll come to bite you
It'll
in the
catch
ass.
up to you. Yeah.
Milton and his aunt often took trips to North Carolina. And on one of these trips, she introduced him to a man who she said was her real father in an attempt to convince him that they were not actually related.
Wow, the lengths. This is why I believe, you know what, a movie wouldn't do this justice because there's so many twists and turns. We need a mini series about Geraldine
A
Parrish.
Netflix miniseries.
Yes, exactly. The two became lovers and then were married by Bishop Nathaniel Brown on July 1st. The marriage certificate said her name was Geraldine Matthews and that she was 40 years old. Wow. He alleged that she continually fed him alcohol and heroin and that he walked around like a zombie. Parrish had taken out an insurance policy on both Milton and his 17-year-old son. Now, again, this was the 80s, but now if you want to get a life insurance policy that's more than like $10,000, you have to get a medical exam. They draw your blood, they weigh you, they check all your vitals and get your medical history and stuff.
You can't just take out a policy.
You can't just go and get a policy. That's crazy.
Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place. For changes big and small. Loud or quiet. Find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Now let's get into the investigation and the arrest. What the what, Beth?
In 1987, a woman named Bernadette Barnes hired Edwin Gordon to kill her husband.
Oh.
A man named Rodney Weiss was the go-between and the one who actually connected Gordon to Bernadette. Bernadette's husband, Henry Barnes, 39, was killed on October 14th, 1987, while he was warming up his car.
Oh, that is one of my worst nightmares.
Yeah.
Is somebody attacking you when your car is on, you're kind of going back and forth between your home and the car, loading it up with the stuff for the day while it, gets going.
Not really paying attention.
Not really paying attention. Oh my goodness. Afterwards, Bernadette confided in a coworker telling them that she'd done it. Alarmed, the coworker called the police. What did you think was going to happen? And who began to investigate? Bernadette Barnes, Rodney Weiss, and Edwin Gordon were all arrested.
Rodney Weiss began talking, trying to get a deal for himself. When police asked him how he knew to hire Gordon and that Gordon was the man for the job, Weiss told police that Gordon had been killing people for Geraldine Parrish for years.
And Bernadette Barnes is Geraldine?
No,
Oh, okay.
She's a completely different woman.
Oh, okay. Glad we cleared that up. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Weiss told police about Dolly Brown and the 3 attempts on her life and how Gordon had told him, quote, "It don't matter what I do. The bitch won't die." Oh my God. wow, the bitch won't die. I've heard people say that as like a joke, but
Yeah,
to
but
hear it
for
that somebody said it in
literally,
real
yeah.
life, literally, the bitch won't die, unquote. He also told them that Gordon had killed Parrish's brother-in-law, Frank Ross.
Geraldine Parrish was arrested at her home on July 22nd during a search and seizure raid. While police were searching her home, she feigned illness and an ambulance was called.
Of course.
Paramedics examined her, found her to be fine, and left within minutes.
Geraldine, if you don't knock it off, we have real people to save. At the same time, a second warrant was being executed at her mother, Thelma Brown's house. Police seized about 45 insurance policies from
Holy
Parrish's
shit.
home and that of her mother. That is, wow.
Incredible. Yeah.
Exactly. Wow. And they used to say life insurance is so cheap. And it must have been if she had 45 policies.
45 policies, yeah.
Holy shit. Wow.
I got so many insurance policies, I got to kill somebody to pay for all of them.
Exactly. And that's how you can become a successful businesswoman. Buy my book, attend my seminar, and watch my TED Talk. Thanks. Geraldine out.
Parrish was taken in for questioning. While in the interrogation room, she at first played dumb, then began talking in tongues and writhing on the floor, basically acting insane.
Huh.
When that didn't work, she started flirting with detectives.
Wow.
She's pulling out every card in her deck.
All of them, every last stop. She left no crumbs. She ate it all up. Hell of a performance.
None of this worked, and she was booked into jail.
Oh, but they didn't give her like an Academy Award or something, too?
No.
Oh, man. Poor Geraldine. Suspecting that Parrish had poisoned Reverend Rayfield Gilliard, the state's attorney's office ordered the exhumation of his body. The first body that was exhumed turned out to be someone else. Huh? A second body also turned out not to be that of Reverend Gilliard. What the fuck? As it turned out, Reverend Gilliard had been buried in a mass pauper's grave, and the exhumation was abandoned. So
yeah,
she would have gotten away with it too if it hadn't been for those snoopy police. So now let's get into the trial. Hit it, Beth.
Although married to multiple men with no divorce decrees in sight, Parrish was not charged with bigamy, since the charge was considered insignificant compared to the murder charges.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Okay. No notes at this time. She faced 4 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. Also indicted were her brother, Ronald Church Brown, 33, Lionel Robinson, 20, and Edwin Bernardo Gordon, 23. In addition, Gordon was also indicted for the murder of Henry Barnes.
And I couldn't find out why Ronald Brown was indicted. I never found any information about that, but
interesting.
He was.
Maybe just being in Geraldine's vicinity
orbit
is enough to get you into trouble.
Parrish went to trial in 1989 for the murder of Albert Robinson. She entered a plea of insanity and acted the part at trial, throwing fits and flailing in her chair. When she took the stand, she claimed that she had been duped by men who made her turn over the proceeds of the insurance policies.
What men, Geraldine? You mean all the dead ones? You're not going to believe this, but the jury didn't buy it and found her guilty of Albert Robinson's murder. Afterwards, she pled guilty to the other murders, and she was sentenced to life in prison. So let's get into where are they now? Tell us, Beth.
After her conviction, Parrish was sent to the Maryland Correctional Facility for Women to serve out her sentence. Parrish died in custody of natural causes in 2004.
Bernadette Barnes, who had contracted the murder of her husband Henry, pled guilty to first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. She was sentenced to life, with all but 40 years suspended after it was found that she had suffered some horrific abuse from her husband. She served 2 years and 2 months.
That's amazing at that time.
I'm my jaw's on the floor. I'm really surprised.
Yeah.
And Bernadette is a woman of color, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's unusual. I mean, within the story, there was a relative of Parrish's that we mentioned earlier who was killed by their domestic partner. So, you know, that's what can happen. And I'm just, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Edwin Gordon was sentenced to life without parole. His wife and the mother of his 2 children testified against him at trial as did Bernadette Barnes.
Rodney Weiss pled guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. His sentence was limited to no more than 10 years. So now let's get into our takes. What are your takes, Beth? What do you think about this case?
Well, she got married at 15. That's young.
That's pretty significant.
Yeah. I've
pretty
noticed for a long time in my life when I meet women who married and had children at a young age like that,
Yeah.
a lot of times it fucks them up.
Yeah. I mean,
I think it's a form of parentification,
what is that?
Well, we know that when a child is expected to behave like an adult in their family, and it's usually due to the adults not being around or available, neglect,
Yeah.
or because they have a lot of siblings and they're expected to parent their younger siblings.
Right. Remember, she had 12.
Yeah. We know this fucks kids up. And I think the same is true of girls who have babies at a young age, and probably boys too. We just don't see it as often.
Yeah.
I think more often boys just abandon the situation, but girls are stuck with it.
Right. Yeah, good point.
And growing up poor and black and the blatant racism in that time and place did not help.
Right. It certainly limited her opportunities, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't imagine that college and
none of that was in the cards for her.
Great jobs were available to Black women at the ready.
No. I mean, they weren't available to women, period. But Black women, especially.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's a good point. Thanks.
Then she experienced a lot of death at a young age as well. I think it made her callous.
Yeah.
Experiencing so much death may have also been why she got so into hoodoo. Hoodoo is kind of a way to take control of situations that you have no control over, or at least you think you can take control over it.
Right.
And she wanted control and she wanted money. A lot of people who grew up poor become obsessed with money.
Yeah.
And I think all of these things together made her very dangerous.
I couldn't have put it better myself. Period. All of those things. All right. Well, let us know what you thought of this story. And if you have any additional facts, like there was some things we couldn't find out about, like, what was it? Her brother? Why was he indicted too?
Ronald
so if you
Church Brown. Yeah. Or
what happened to her kids?
Yeah, if they were kids. Yeah. Were there kids? I don't know.
Yeah.
Let us know.
If for anybody out there who is familiar with this case, let us know. Beth, where can the people find us?
Our website is fruitloopspod.com, and we use Fruit Loops Pod for all of our social media.
This is a weekly podcast, and new episodes drop every Thursday. So until next time, look alive, y'all. It's crazy out there.
Hey, podcast listeners, I'm Paul Brandis introducing my podcast, Countdown to Dallas. It's a fascinating, in-depth look at the seemingly unconnected events that led to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. It's based on my book of the same title. In that book and in this podcast, I go all the way back to 1939, when Lee Harvey Oswald was born into a troubled and dysfunctional family. I'll follow his transient and often violent teenage years and young adulthood, painting a fuller picture of the man who would later become Kennedy's killer. I also take a look at events unfolding in that era, like Cuba and Vietnam, and I'll unpack the conspiracy theories too, not one of which has ever been conclusively proven. Subscribe to Countdown to Dallas at evergreenpodcasts.com or your favorite listening app, October 31st.
The truth about the Haditha massacre has been covered up, but not anymore.
I know you know what happened.
They went into houses and killed women and children.
What are you thinking?
What a mess.
U.S. Marines murdered innocent civilians in cold blood.
And at the center of it all
is 25-year-old Sergeant Frank Wuderick.
And me. Murder in House 2. A new podcast from Crowd Network.